tonight we're really honored to be joined by Jordan Lefler, who is a photographer of some repute. And among his many awards is his most recent and no doubt most prized award, which is the winner of the 2022 Glacier National Park Conservancy photo contest. So honored both to have you, in our content for next year, and also to have you with us tonight. Thanks for joining us from down in your part of the country.
Yeah, you bet. It's great to meet you, Doug, and to be here with you all. I do have a story that I'll share later on about that photo that actually won me the photo contest. But for now, I guess, should I just start with my background? And
yeah, I think, Jordan, one of the things, we visited a little bit beforehand, and, I wanted to ask, you grew up in Arlee on the Flathead Reservation, and just kind of thinking about that and how that informs your work and how you've carried that with you as you've become a photographer.
Yeah, so I grew up, I was born in Missoula, but grew up pretty much my whole life in Arlee on the reservation. It's about 25 miles north of Missoula. I'm a second descendant Salish, which means my grandma is an enrolled member, and then my dad would be a first descendant, which makes me second. I grew up in the Jocko Valley here, and it was here where I learned to fish and where I did all my recreating, and just kind of was surrounded in the culture that has been in this valley for, over 100 years. And I remember growing up, as far back as I can remember, we always had Salish language class, even as little kids. And our Salish teacher let everybody pick a Salish name, and it was usually an animal. Most people picked animals. Sometimes it was a plant or something like that. But my Salish name was Coyote, which is Sinchetle. And even to this day, I'll see my Salish teacher out, and she remembers my Salish name, and she'll say Chesquex Sinchetle, which means good morning, Coyote. And it was a beautiful upbringing I had here. You think of, Native American culture, and they always had this reputation of not wasting, respecting the land, not wasting anything. You've heard of, they go on buffalo hunts and kill a bison, and every part of the bison gets used. And they, will even use the bladder as something to carry water in and liquid. So there's always been this culture that has been ingrained in me of, respecting the land, respecting animals, and having that connection to that.
Yeah, and I think, that we think these days there's a, concept about leave no trace, right? And I know that that's a narrative that we're going to talk about a little bit tonight, and it's no doubt challenging also as a photographer, right? When you're trying to practice leave no trace, but you're also trying to get a good picture of a meadow or of an animal and those kinds of things. So be interesting to kind of hear from that perspective. The Jocko Valley really is, in my estimation, an incredibly beautiful place. And people have not traveled there. People kind of say, oh, it's in between Missoula and Flathead Lake. Well, that in between is pretty darn spectacular. It's, just when you say the word you're surrounded by, to me, that's the feeling I get when I drive through the Jocko Valley, that it really feels like Yahweh, God, whatever you think, there is spirituality that lives there. And I imagine that kind of, you carry that with you a little bit as a photographer, as you're looking for that image, you think about how you can portray the feelings you have, not just the image, but the feelings you're having as a photographer. Does that translate to you as you're doing your work?
Sure, it does. And, Doug, when you say you said being surrounded by, and I think of the Jocko Valley, and we are surrounded by mountains on every side. And it actually reminds me of the Salish have creation stories of how the world came to be, and and how different animals came to be. And they are told in a way, they call them coyote stories, because the I don't know if he's the protagonist, but he's almost an anti-hero, because he's kind of a trickster and he gets into trouble sometimes. But Coyote is the kind of the main character of all these stories. And they only tell these stories when there's snow on the ground. So in the traditional Salish ways, they don't tell these creation stories outside of winter. And there's one story in particular where I won't try to do all the details, because my brain's a little foggy and I don't want to mess up the story, but of how our Jocko Valley came to be, and how it was this giant dragon, and Coyote was being told by all these different animals, watch out, there's this dragon up ahead, you don't want to disturb it. And he thought he was going to outsmart this dragon, and he cut this large tree down that he held so that the monster wouldn't be able to eat him. And he kept going along on his way, and pretty soon he started seeing bones on the ground, and pretty soon he was surrounded by these mountains, and he little to his own demise, he had walked right into this valley, which was, I believe, the Jocko Valley, and how it was created. And he was just surrounded by these mountains. And I recommend everybody go kind of read the story and look it up, because I did an awful job of kind of explaining it, but it's a beautiful way of kind of thinking about the mountains that surround us, and how things came to be in traditional ways.
Yeah, that's super interesting. We had the honor of being able to hold our board meeting this last year as guests of the Blackfeet Nation. This coming year, we will be guests of the Salish and Kootenai Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes in May, which is awesome. And they have a similar trickster in Napi, right, in the Blackfeet tradition. And those stories are so special, in part, in fact, of the narrative of the Native American Speaks program, which will be in its 41st year next year, being able to tell those stories from the authentic voices of both Blackfeet and Salish and Kootenai. So yeah, that's it's an incredible background, and it's obviously important to your work. So why don't I pass it off to you, and I know you've put together a presentation, and walk us through that. And we're not shy, so if we have questions, people will put them in the chat, and Amy will help curate the chat for us. And again, thanks so much for putting something together for us tonight, Jordan.
Yeah. Do you want to, should we go ahead and do this screen share?
Yeah, let's do it.
Here's the Jocko River. Another shot of the Jocko River. This is Gray Wolf Peak, and that is a beautiful hike in the summer up there, with East and West St. Mary's Peaks up here. So I've done a lot of my early career. I started out basically just recreating here and in the mountains that surrounded my home. And it wasn't until 2019 that I actually went up to Glacier and fell in love with Glacier. And the very first, everybody's done, Avalanche and Hidden Lake and those things, but the very first kind of hike that I fell in love with was the Highline Trail. And I think you guys actually have this photo here hanging up in your office and at the airport. But I had to be, going from a public land kind of background to the national park. even I had to be educated with leave no trace principles. And it wasn't like I was, somebody that didn't care and littered and anything like that, but different things, you think about like not walking off trail and you think, what's the big deal? I'm just one person. But if everybody thought that, we get what, 3 million people come through the park every summer. If everybody thought what's the big deal and they walked off trail, then those plants, those flowers would cease to exist by the end of the season. So even I had to be educated on the leave no trace principles when I fell in love with Glacier. And as a photographer, even I was a little unprepared for the kind of the national park system. I'm going to share a story here. This happened this was the COVID year, and this was when all the shuttles were shut down. So a friend and we decided to do this hike, and we were like, okay, we're going to be smart. We're going to drive 2 vehicles. We're going to leave one down at the loop. We're going to leave the other one up at Logan Pass, right? And then we'll come down from the chalet and then drive back up. So we get a few miles into the hike, and I have a video. I'm hoping that it plays and that everybody can watch it and it doesn't skip. So forgive me if it does, but this is I was recording the moment we found out we messed up big time.
What? Forgot your truck keys. I even put them in the middle console. Oh, or hitchhiking.
So we forgot the truck keys.
That's funny.
And yeah, so we ended up continuing on the hike. We decided to keep going. And it was such an amazing hike. A beautiful day. We made it all the way. We did the overlook, the Grinnell overlook, made it to the chalet, signed the registry, and ended up getting a ride back up to the Logan Pass parking lot and getting down. But so that was my first big eye opener. That was like, I need to be more educated about things and I need to be better prepared. But the chalet really captured me, and I set a goal and I was like, I want to stay there next year. So I set a goal to stay at the chalet the following year. The rooms went online and I missed out. So I checked back every single day for months and months until finally there was some cancellations in the spring and I got a room. So fast forward to a year later, and my brother and I and a buddy hiked back into the chalet, and one of the shots on my bucket list was to do some night photos of the chalet and to get the Milky Way and the stars. So here's a shot looking up the stairs of the chalet. I had to work up the courage to go down to the ground, and especially the whole time I'm up there, I'm thinking I got the Night of the Grizzlies running in the back of my head. And so I'm up there with a buddy, and we're being respectful of other people, so we're not turning lights on. We're being very quiet. And these are just a few. Here's a shot from the second story balcony, just out of the room of our door. And then finally, I made it to the ground, and here's my shot of the Milky Way behind the Granite Park Chalet. And this was so nerve-wracking. This is actually, I think, 10 different photos. They're all stitched into one to create this panorama. And the whole time I'm out here, I probably spent 30 minutes trying to get this composition with these photos. And the whole time I'm out here, there's a couple of deer that are walking around and they're breaking twigs, and I can see, shadows moving, and like the whole time my neck, the hairs on my neck are just standing up. And I was really, really happy I got these though. And that was like a big bucket list photo for me that I wanted to get. And I was super, super happy with how they turned out. But the journey wasn't done there. So we woke up at 4 a.m. to hike up to the overlook for sunrise. And we got up there, the lighting was beautiful. We had a beautiful sunrise. And we were treated to some goats that came up and hung out with us. I think this one actually made it in the finals of the photo contest last year. But I got some great photos of these goats up there. There's looking towards McDonald Lake. We got the sun hitting the peaks, some beautiful flowers up there. But this was compared to my previous trip on the Highline Trail, this one was a lot better. Went a lot more smooth. I was a lot more prepared. And I got some great photos that I was super, super thrilled with. So
that's truly amazing. I will say, I think you have about 50 volunteers. If you need somebody to go up with you and have your back while you're taking pictures, I think you have a lot of volunteers here.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, what's the stat? Is it no more? There's been no grizzly attacks on 4 or more people, or
that sounds right.
Something about that.
So yeah, I like to be in that range. Makes me feel a little more comfortable.
And just keep the truck keys in your pocket.
Exactly. Yeah. Always remember the truck keys.
Yeah, Jordan, you're probably not seeing the chat, but you're getting lots of wows and fantastics and spectacular. And so we're all in awe for sure.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
And remember, folks, there is a giveaway. So keep notes on which ones you might see that you might, if you win the giveaway. You get your choice. Yeah. Jordan is going to let you curate your own choice and then sign and send it to you. So take good notes.
Yes, exactly. So I've got another fast forward to another year. This was actually this last winter. This was a big bucket list item for me as well. I've been up for the Northern Lights a few times, and they've just kind of had the dull kind of green glow. It might have been like a 5 or a 6 on the index. So I've always really wanted to get a great photo of the pillars, and you got the pink and the purples and the greens. So last winter, my brother and I headed up there. My brother's also a professional photographer, so it helps to have him. He's always down, to go up and take photos whenever we want. So we got an alert that the Northern Lights were going to be out. I think this was last April, and it was showing that it was going to be around 5 or a 6 at like 11 o'clock at night, but it actually wasn't going to peak to a 7 until around 3 in. So my brother and I went into the park, got some decent shots at between 10 and 11, and then it's like the lights just went away completely. And we were debating on, do we just go home and go to sleep? Doesn't seem like they're even active anymore. Doesn't seem like they're going to come back. But we stuck it out, and we remembered that it said that they were going to peak at 3 in. So we waited up, got our tripod set up around 2 and just ran a time lapse. And I'll play the time lapse first, and you can see that. So this is in between 2 in the morning and 3 in the morning.
Unbelievable.
So that was the extent of about an hour and a half worth of shooting. And then I had 2 cameras going. So the other camera was capturing landscape instead of a vertical portrait mode. And this is the shot I got off my second camera during the peak of it. And this is the one that I won the photo contest with this year. So
Wow.
to have almost gone home and went to bed, to staying up and waiting it out and getting a photo like this and having it win me the photo contest, it feels so good. I'm super proud of this one.
Well, you should be. It's an amazing photograph. So tell me a little bit about kind of the post-production on something like this. So you've taken this time lapse, you've got 2 cameras, at least you don't have to, like I used to have to do, wait for the film to be developed.
Yeah.
But, so how does that process work for you that you end up with a photo that you can submit to a contest and win it?
Mm-hmm. So what I usually do, get all my stuff imported into, I use Lightroom to edit, which is an Adobe product. And it's very powerful as far as editing and keeping things organized. So I will get everything imported, and then what I usually do is go through all of my photos for that day and select the ones that I think are the best, select ones that can kind of go by the wayside and be deleted. And then I will go through, once I've gone through everything from that day, I will go through again and then choose the ones that I want to be actually edited. For something like a time lapse, it's you got to keep, basically everything. What I try to do is edit one to my liking as far as, where the exposure is going to be, the colors, and all that. And then what I can do is then copy the settings from that photo and apply it to the rest. And so it saves you a ton of time, instead of, that was a 10-second timeline. So that was 300 plus images. So instead of, having to edit that many images, you can just get one to your liking and then apply the preset just to everything else. And
There's a Jordan Lefler pro hack right there.
yeah. So then you're not done yet. So then you gotta, I shot all these just as still JPEG images, or I shoot raw, but they all get exported as JPEGs. And then you take that into your video editing software. And that's where all the still photos are combined to make a video. So you can run, I usually do the math before I start shooting, you're shooting still photos, but you want it to be a video, and videos usually from 24 frames per second to 30 frames per second. So, I'll do some calculations and think, my shutter's 15 seconds with a 1 second break. How long am I going to have to shoot to get 300 images to make a 10-second video? So a lot of that is done before I start shooting. So then I know when I get back that I'm going to have a 10-second video that is going to look good.
That's cool. Math and photography, who knew?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was not a math fan when I was in high school, but I appreciate it now. Okay. let's see. So, should I go into, I have some examples, of leave no trace principles, some that I've seen in other national parks that weren't great.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. A question popped into my mind, maybe as a little interlude. So, was there a moment when, or a certain picture that you said to yourself, you looked at a picture you'd taken and said, I can do this. This is what I want to do. Is there a moment or a particular photograph maybe that was that moment when you decided this was your path?
My history with cameras started when I was 10 years old, and I got a skateboard for my birthday. And then my brothers got skateboards, and then our cousins got skateboards. So there was about 5 to 10 of us at any time, all skateboarding together. And we saw, what the professionals were doing. So then we bought a camera so that we could start making our own skateboarding videos. So I actually started my career in filmmaking and photography started with skateboarding. And then it progressed to, I got older and I was in high school and I was doing sketch comedy and music videos with my friends. And then I went to the University of Montana and I applied for the media arts program. And that's when I was like, okay, I can make a career out of something that I've been passionate about since I was 10 years old.
That's cool. That's an awesome story. Thanks for sharing that. I think as you transition to leave no trace, right? This is a challenge that we're having, all of us who love Glacier, is whether it's being loved too much. And I know that and maybe Amy, if you have these handy, you could put the links up to the couple of films that Jordan has helped with, one of which I think was called The Best Last Place. And it's really about change, in Montana. And it's one of the things I spoke early on with our new superintendent, who's amazing, by the way, if you haven't met him, Dave Romer, that's really a big thing for him. And that's, how do we educate 3 million visitors, many of whom don't, hold that same conservation ethic or history, perhaps, about leave no trace? Because as you say, I'm just picking one wildflower, but 3 million wildflowers is a whole different piece of business. So that's an interesting topic. So talk to us a little bit about what you've seen in other parks and how that's kind of informed your work here.
Yeah, so I'm gonna start out with an instance in the Grand Tetons, and my brother and I were there a couple of years ago shooting, and there's this really famous spot. It's called Schwalbacher's Landing, and it's this beautiful spot that's kind of down on this stream where it turns into a pond, and you can get some really beautiful reflection shots of the mountains lit up by a sunrise or a sunset. And so when my brother and I got there, first thing we saw was a sign that said, please keep off vegetation restoration past the sign. And so, our first thought was, okay, we got to find another place to shoot or we'll stay behind the sign, right? So here, this is a photo that I took. I'm standing behind the sign, and this guy right here, he walked up right in front of me, past the sign, and proceeded to set up his tripod right in front of me. And didn't really, I said something to him. He pretended not to hear me, type of thing. And so my brother and I were like, okay, well, we're just gonna move on and find another spot to take a photo. But that was kind of my first realization that there are people that don't really care as long as it's serving them a purpose, So this guy didn't care about the vegetation restoration. He just wanted a good composition for his photo. So my brother and I moved on, and I'm going to show you. This is just one of the tricks that you can do. I mean, I realize not everybody has professional editing software, professional, cameras, but this is the photo that I took from the same spot, and a little bit down the trail where we could access the waterfront. And using the clone stamp tool, I was able to get rid of all that stuff that was, kind of in the water and muddying up the frame there. So that to me is just kind of a way that you can still leave no trace and respect the habitat, and get a composition that works, but do it in a way that doesn't ruin it for the next person. If you're taking a photo of a spot and there's a bush in the way that you don't like, so you might decide, oh, I'm just going to walk off the trail a little bit to get it out of the frame. It's like, is there something else that you can do to prevent that? And I think with current technology and the cameras we have and the editing software we have, it seems like there's always something you can do that you can make your image better without having to leave the trail or to get too close to a mountain goat or something like that. Okay. So my next story, it's another one that happened. This one actually happened in Glacier, and this was last winter. My brother and I were taking photos on Lake McDonald at Apgar, and there was a guy. We walked past him and we saw him getting a drone out, and we said something to him, and he acknowledged us, and he said, "Oh, okay, I didn't know." And then we walked down the shoreline a little ways, and sure enough, we heard the buzz of the drone as it was flying around over the lake, and we were just kind of like, "Really? We told you, I understand to a certain extent, because I was once ignorant to some of that stuff, but we tried to educate him, and he just didn't care." But I will say, not everybody's like that. There was an instant where my brother and I were in Zion National Park, and we had done a hike to the canyon overlook. And while we were up there was tons of other people up there, and we were talking with a guy, and he started getting his drone out, and we mentioned to him, drones are illegal in national parks, and what the consequences could be. And he had no problem putting it away, and he thanked us, and he was like, "Oh, I had no clue. Thank you guys. Like, I would hate to have gotten a ticket or gotten kicked out or whatever." So there's different different folks that are teachable and will respect the rules and the guidelines, but then there's others that aren't. Yeah. So we've ran into instances of both of that.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It's a hard thing, because the person wants to capture something. But I do find when you kind of explain, well, the wildlife, the wildlife, and you think about Harlequin ducks, for example, on Lake McDonald. If it's in the spring and the Harlequin ducks are trying to nest, a drone is going to be really bad business, right? So there are some good reasons, and I think that is going to be one of our challenges going forward. How do you educate an increasing number of people about what it means to go into the backcountry, and that there is not going to be a flush toilet at Avalanche Lake, just people don't know that. So and they also try and emulate what they see. That's the other responsibility as a photographer, right? Is that with social media, people see your shot and then they want to go get it.
Mhm.
that no doubt adds some responsibility to you as an artist.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Well, this is an amazing picture. Tell us about this.
Oh, yes. This was this summer at Swift Current at the mini glacier area. Actually, I've got quite a few. I will just open these up and let them play.
Maybe while some of those are showing, I see 33 entries into the chat, Amy. So no doubt there are some folks who have some great questions for Jordan as well.
Yes, for sure. And I'm going to read some of these comments too, Jordan, as we go along, because you should get to hear them as well. But Candy and Carl have a question about what is the most challenging photo you have taken?
Actually, some of these. I love water drop photography. You'll see a couple of them in the slideshow here. Those are always a real challenge, but I love them because I don't see them very often. And I've done water drop photos in pretty much every lake I've been to in Glacier. But it's an interesting type of photography because what I will do is I have a water dropper that I use to drop a thing of water, and then I will try to capture the water drop as it comes. It's just like barely on the surface of the body of water. So it takes a lot of timing and a lot of patience. Sometimes I'll take 2,000 photos just to get the one, because it's sometimes it's out of frame, or my composure or my composition was bad, but that's usually the hardest photography that I do.
So you have the water dropper and camera in different hands, or is the camera on a tripod?
Yep.
Oh, really?
Yep. So I'm like this, camera down by the water and dropping a water drop from up here.
Wow. That's cool to hear, because I've always wondered how does this happen?
Yeah. Yep. So that's the secret. And some of them, the even more challenging ones are the ones where there's no, like the one that was back a few photos, that's I don't have any water at all, and I'm just kind of dropping a water drop in front of the lens, and trying to capture that mid air with composition and background and everything. It's a lot of elements to try to get into one photo.
So cool.
Yeah. So here's some comments. Margaret says these photos are spectacular. Misty says incredible. Brent says wow. Cheryl, gorgeous. Lots of wows and breathtaking. Brent would like to know, and maybe we talked about this, but I don't know that we talked specifically about stitching photographs together. What software do you use to stitch your Northern Lights photos together, or just stitch photos together?
Yeah, so I use Lightroom, and it's got an amazing feature in there where it will take my raw photos. So does everybody know what a raw photo is? Or I can just kind of explain it. So you've got your JPEG, which is a very compressed image. So a lot of higher end cameras shoot in what's called RAW, which is basically a digital negative. And so you retain all your best details, and it makes color correcting a lot easier. And especially with night shots where you have to use a lot of high ISO, it helps to get rid of some of that noise. But in Lightroom, you can grab a selection of photos and tell it, I want this to be a panorama, and it will stitch all of them together and know, where the stitch points are, and do its best to even correct the horizon so that it's level.
Nice.
So then once it's stitched in there, it becomes one photo that's, and you're using non-destructive editing to edit this photo. So if you mess up and need to go, back to square one, you can just, reset all your settings and it'll bring you back to that panorama photo that it stitched together. But that's how I do it. And I've done, I do lots of, it's one of my favorite ways, because I feel like a lot of times photos don't really capture the magnitude and the awe of Glacier National Park. And sometimes I feel like here's a panoramic shot right here. Sometimes I feel like the panorama does a little better. It kind of, you can jam more into one photo. And, I've done photos where I will start here and go all the way and almost get 360-degree view, using 20 photos, and then they're all stitched together. So that's how I do it in Lightroom. And it makes it really, really easy to do.
Jordan said it's really easy to do, everyone.
Amy, we have some good news for a couple of our participants.
Oh, let's do a giveaway.
So Donna Manspart and Lyman Holmes, you are our winners tonight. So our group will get you hooked up with our guest to choose a photo, and he will customize it for you, sign it for you, and get it to you. So congratulations. That's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan, for being so generous, giving away some photos. That's great.
Of course.
I think we have a couple more questions in here. One is, what camera gear do you use?
So I shoot with all Sony cameras. I have 3. 2 are basically dedicated for photo, and then 1 is more for video. And I have a Sony A7 III, a Sony A7 IV, and a Sony A7S III. And my go-to lenses that I use to shoot, my favorite one for night photography, astrophotography, is a Samyang. It's called. That's SAMYANG, and it's a 12 millimeter with a manual focus, so it makes focusing on the stars really easy. And that's pretty much what you want to focus on when you're doing night photos. So that's a really great lens for night photos, and even for just, some epic wide landscape shots during sunset. My favorite all around multi-lens is a Tamron 28 millimeter to 70 millimeter. And that's a great lens for, if you do portrait work, that's great. That's great for, wider landscape shots, and then even zooming up for a closer shot on an animal. But what I mostly use for my wildlife shots is I have a Sony 100 to 400 millimeter with a 2x teleconverter that I can put on there. So then it can go from a 2 to an 800. So all these close-up animal shots you see were with my telephoto lens. And a lot of times I've missed a lot of good photo opportunities by leaving that giant lens in my bag. Mm-hmm. And I learned very quickly that I need to have it out at all times. So now I hike with one camera that I hooks to my hiking bag, and then another camera with my telephoto on it that's kind of slung around my chest. So I have 2 cameras out at all times, and one's got a wider lens, and then one's got my telephoto lens, so I can zoom in when I need to.
And the truck keys in your pocket.
And always the truck keys, yeah.
So you're pretty easy to spot out there if we happen to run into you.
Yes, you would probably know it's me. And there might even be a sport camera mounted to the other side of my my backpack.
Let's see. Candy and Carl also want to know if you do photography classes. And Brent would like to know, he wants all your photos. So do you have a photo book for sale?
Both of those are in the works. I would love to do some photography classes, and do a meetup and, have people ask questions and kind of show people, how I go about shooting a certain scene. So that's in the works. I'm working on that. And then the photo book as well. I have a website where all of these prints are available, but I know I've had a few people ask for a book that might have, all of my favorite glacier photos in it. So I'm working on both.
That's good news.
Andrew has a great question. Do you scout your Milky Way locations during the daylight to compose the shot?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of the times it's either a location I've been before and I've seen it during the daylight. And then sometimes, probably 90% of the time, you know what I'm doing before it gets dark. But then, 10% I might go at it with in the dark. And I actually got some great photos at Swift Current of a Milky Way time lapse that I have yet to compile into a video. But I had my tripod in the water and it was low over the water. So I got a reflection of the Milky Way on the water and got it going over the mountains. But that was one where it was kind of like I was in my surroundings and it was dark and I was like, I'm just going to give this a try. So I took a few test shots and decided, the composition that I liked. And that was another one where my brother and I just let our cameras run for an hour and then went back and grabbed them. So most of the time I do my scouting, but then I always leave opportunities for myself to take a photo when I'm seeing an opportunity.
Doug, we have a few more questions in here, but did you want to do a Jordan Lefler speed round?
All right, wouldn't be a Glacier Conversation without a speed round. So Jordan, are you ready to answer Fast and Furious?
I think so. Let's go.
All right. So one of the movies that I did watch today, actually, Saving the Berg. It's a PBS piece that Jordan was. So the first question is regarding the Peaberg Brewing Company. Other Water Pale Ale or Montana One IPA?
I'm going to go with Otter Water, but I'm also going to throw in a third answer, and I'm going to say Razoo. That's my favorite from Peaberg. Okay,
very good. A fruity choice. Well done.
Yep.
Okay, this one, I think we know the answer. Cats or Grizz?
Grizz.
Okay, very good. So you're a fisherman. Are you a spin fisherman or a fly fisherman?
I don't discriminate. I would say 80% of the time I'm fly fishing, but then, when it's ice fishing season, I'm ice fishing. When it's good fishing from the boat, I'm fishing from the boat. I know the brook trout's a favorite and they can go either way. So, Okay. So knowing that, so I have two additional follow-up questions. Elk hair caddis or royal wolf? I'm an elk hair caddis kind of guy.
Okay. Daredevil or MEPS number 2?
Ooh, I got to go with the MEPS.
Okay. Very good. Now this last two are risky. East side or west side?
Ooh. That's a good one. I love them both, but I might have to go with east side.
Okay, east side, best side, as many people, including myself, say. And then last, of course, thematically, France or Argentina?
I'm gonna go Argentina.
Messi's gonna get his World Cup. Okay. I've written all of the answers to this down. We'll see how you do on Sunday.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy, for indulging me that. I think we learned a lot about Jordan.
We did for sure. Just a special note, Misty wrote cats in all capital letters. And I'm with you, Jordan, but it's a hard year to be a Grizz.
It is.
So go Cats, since the Grizz are out. Okay, folks, I think we might go a few minutes over. So Jordan, is it okay? Will you give us a little bit of extra time to get through some of these comments and questions?
Yeah, you bet.
Awesome. I'll just say Lauren says her two favorite photos are the second shot at Swift Current that is pinkish purple and the photo of the goat up at the chalet. And the goat is definitely one of my favorites. And since we just saw the grizzly bear pop up, I think it was Brent that wanted to know what time of year that shot was taken. Was that in the spring?
Yeah, that was. I think that was the second. Well, I mean, I guess spring is. It was like the second week that Going to the Sun was open. So it's, July, but kind of spring up in Logan Pass. But that was actually, so my brother and I and a buddy, we were photographing sunrise at Wild Goose, and we get done with our sunrise, and we had a hike planned at Otokomi. And so we're getting ready to drive over there, and we turn the corner, and there's this bear. We saw him all the way down at the by the boat dock on the road, by the corner by the boat dock on St. Mary. And so we sat in that little pull off that's right there on the corner, and we kind of just waited for him to stroll up along next to us, and we got some awesome photos and videos of him. That was a highlight. That was like, I think, our first big trip of the summer. So that was a great way to start off the summer.
Wow. And did he just keep walking past you? He or she?
Yeah, we tried to do our part, and we drove up ahead to the Wild Goose, people at Wild Goose, to tell them there was a bear coming up on the road.
Nice.
But we got some great photos of him, the bear kind of just looking back at us, and he didn't care one bit. He just kept going up the road.
Cool. Any time where you captured an amazing coincidence in nature that you wouldn't have ever imagined catching?
Yeah. Let me actually find the photo. I just posted it today on my Instagram and my Facebook. Okay, so this one right here. So I had spent probably an hour up behind the visitor entrance doing some shots of Clements and Reynolds with the stars over them. And this was, I don't know, probably midnight or something like that. And I was tired, heading back down. I had a campsite at St. Mary, and I, for some reason, just decided that my camera's on my tripod. I'm loading my bags and my gear in my Jeep. I'm just going to take one last long exposure, even though it's the parking lot. Who would think to take a photo in the parking lot? So I set my camera and pressed the shutter, and I loaded all my gear, and I turned around right before this was like a 15-second shutter. Turned around, and I saw this, what you can see, that meteor there streak right over the mountain. And it was, I think, a couple days after the Perseid meteor shower. So this must have been a straggler. And I looked at my camera, and there's like a second before it shows you the final developed picture. And I looked at it, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad that I took the time to just take a parking lot photo. So I was super thrilled with this shot. And you can see the moon kind of illuminating some haze and some smoke from one of the smoke, the wildfires that was nearby, and the stars in the sky. And then there's somebody else, getting into their car, getting ready to make the descent down Logan Pass. But this was a a very happy accident this summer. So I was super thrilled with this shot.
Yeah, it's wonderful. For those of you who have not been to a star party up at Logan Pass, hopefully they will be back with a full schedule next year, but it is something to experience. Really fun to go up there in the middle of the night. And Margaret has a great comment. She feels that there's probably a Gary Larson cartoon in all of this, but your camera body armor probably makes you less appealing to the food chain. So you can feel good about that.
I like that. Makes me feel safe.
Andrew wants to know, what's your bucket list glacier shot?
I got two of the ones I wanted this summer, or this year, I guess. The Northern Lights one was a big one. I did get another bucket list shot this fall. We had a Northern Lights around October, I think it was, and it was a 7 on the KP index. And for those of you that don't know, the index is like a 1 to a 9, I think, is the highest number, and that's basically the intensity of the solar storm that creates the Northern Lights. So we can usually see them around 6, 7, and then they just get more and more beautiful when you get up to 8 and 9. But there was a 7 going on, and my brother and I went up to Kintla Lake, and we got some Northern Lights over Kintla. And I'd been wanting to do that one for a while, because that one, going to McDonald is it's easier to lick your wounds if you don't get any great shots, rather than driving all the way to Kintla and having nothing, go on. So that one, I was really, really glad that one worked out.
Wow, that's awesome. And I think we have a hand raised. Rhea, do you want to unmute and ask a question? If that hand raise is intentional. If not, I think we have maybe covered all of the questions, unless anyone else has something for Jordan.
Well, it's a celebration tonight. We celebrate some incredible art. We celebrate your win in the contest. We celebrate, a year that's coming to a successful end thanks to you. So here's to you all. Raise a glass to you and to the hope from our family to yours that this holiday season will be filled for you with the joyous sounds of family and friends. And as we think about this new year, we think of a new year filled with peace and promise and hope for all of us. It's been a year of 2022 filled with both opportunity and challenge. And we thank you all for being a part of our family here at the Glacier Conservancy. We love what we do, and we couldn't do it without you. And Jordan Lefler, thank you for taking time out to not only share with us tonight, but to spend time in the park and give your lens to this place that means so much to so many. You could tell tonight that your work connected with people in a way that is really meaningful. And I think that's how we win this Leave No Trace battle, is that when we, show people of ourselves in a way that invites them, inspires them to join this journey with us, that we win. So Jordan, thank you very much for your gift and for sharing it with us. And to all of you with us tonight, thanks for another great Glacier conversation. And we'll look forward to getting back at it next year. Thanks again, Jordan.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. This was in the Sperry Chalet where I stayed this last summer. And I really love this quote. It says, "I've been here nearly 30 years now, and no 2 days have been the same. So while you're here, pay attention. Whatever happens to you today will never happen again." And I think that's a beautiful way of looking at the park and whenever you spend time in the park. And I know photography is a way to capture a moment that will never happen again, and most moments are almost impossible to reproduce. And that kind of magic can't exist without places like Glacier National Park. And I think we all need to do our best to keep this place as wild as the day that we found it, so that other people can enjoy it just like we have.
Yeah. Amen. Well, thanks everybody, and thanks for a great evening together. Hope you'll enjoy the rest of it, and travel safe out there. Thanks so much. Good night.